Rolling now. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another podcast. This time on the podcast, we have Vatsal Kanakiya. Welcome to the podcast, Vatsal.
Hey Yash, good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, so we'll be talking about a couple of things today from FTX, SBF, the Web3 space, Web3 investing, and whatnot. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Awesome. Okay, so this is like a very weird thing I do on every podcast. I just ask the guest to introduce themselves because whenever I try to do it, I always miss out on a couple of key points, which is like really embarrassing. Okay, so Vatsal Kanakiya, like who is Vatsal Kanakiya? What do you do?
Yeah, not very interesting as a person, but I'm the principal and CTO at 100x. My job is simple. It's just like any other VCs. We find great founders, back them from day one, from ideation stage, paper napkin day stage, say, work closely with them to help them build out the idea, the business model, the go to market, marketing, positioning strategy, tech, product roadmap, whatever, right? Help them shape
Hmm,
that, and then we help them scale and raise and consume more capital. That is broadly what my job is and what 100x does, right? Which is first check investors, pure first check, very single minded focus from our end. Write the first check, work with you, help you build the business out. That's what we do. But yeah, that's also me right now. So work with founders, also on tech and product roadmap, help them build out that 0 to 1 of the product MVP and figure out kind of how to focus on the most important things in the early days. Yeah, that's broadly
interesting.
me.
Okay, so let's talk about the principal and the CTO role. Right? We discussed this like before the podcast as well, but I want you to sort of make it like what a CTO does and what like a principal does and what your role exactly is like at 100x and also like 2M VC.
Yeah. So generally what happens is every VC investor has the same role, whether you're a GP, whether you're a principal, whether you're an associate, whether you're an analyst, right? Your basic fundamental role remains the same, right? It's to find great founders, um, build a thesis around their business, and lead an investment internally, right? Champion them internally, convince everybody else that, hey, this is worth investing in, and hopefully write a check. And then post the check, support them on their business, on the tech, in whatever way you can, right? Kind of. That is the core job that everybody has.
Mm-hmm.
Principal is a slightly more senior role, right? So the hierarchy generally goes analyst, associate, principal, and then partner kind of thing. So principal is just like one level below partner, and the idea is that principals generally make recommendations to the IC, to the partners directly, um, and yeah, they have rights to invest and kind of are much closer to the decision making strata than others might be. But broadly, the job remains the same as
Interesting.
any other
Hmm.
investor. Then as CTO, I work on internal tech, internal products, internal processes, which help us evaluate the deals a lot faster. We currently see, for example, over 1,500 odd deals a month. So we want to make sure we reach out to each and every one with a response, and we process and evaluate each and every one. So need processes for that. We need tools
Hmm.
which help us evaluate them better, take data-driven decisions, all of that. So yeah, that's what I work on, and also parallelly do the tech evaluation, tech DD for any startups that come across our way, and post investment also help them out with building the tech out. So that's broadly what my role
Sure.
consists.
Awesome. Okay, so this was like mainly like context setting for the viewers, right? So now we'll jump into the actual meat of the conversation. Okay, so let's talk about Web3 investing, right? So
Hmm.
considering they have blockchains in place, like fundraising and all that should be easier logistic wise, right? So is that what happens or that's not true?
I'm not sure I get the question.
Sure. So, like, with the advent of like blockchains in the system, let's say for Web3 startups, like, is fundraising easier, like logistic wise, because everything is sort of transparent. So, if anyone wants to sort of check okay, what's happening there, it's easily visible. So is that how it works or no?
The tech has very little to do with if fundraising is easy or not. In the end,
Mm-hmm.
fundraising is still dependent on market cycles, right? कि
Mm.
liquidity है कि नहीं, interest rates कितना है. Everything is related to the Fed and their actions, at least right now. But what has changed with uh, the advent of Ethereum and Bitcoin is, companies are today more like venture studios uh, than
Mm-hmm.
like Facebooks or Amazons or the big tech of the past, right? Um, Companies today in Web3 will not become big tech by creating something and accruing rent from that platform for life, right? The way it's gonna work is a company creates a project, right? Hands the project over to the community, and they get paid in a lump sum amount of tokens or some sort of value creation that they do initially. And I assuming the project sees a lot of usage, the token will accrue value, and hence
Mm-hmm.
the company's holding of the token will accrue value, right? But the company does not get tokens or anything from the project beyond that initial lump sum unless they are contributing to the project in some way, right? For
Sure.
example, by if you're Uniswap, right, providing liquidity pools, right, then you'll earn some yield, that kind of stuff. Um, so what happens is every company will effectively try to create multiple projects, whether in the same or iterations of the same initial project. For example, Uniswap with V1, V2, V3
Mm-hmm.
focus, or in a separate field itself. Aave group of companies move from Aave to Lens as well right now, right? So depends. As an investor, you're basically investing in a venture studio, right? A company
Mm.
is something that will create multiple projects, and hopefully a few of them will click. Their tokens will accrue value, will see usage, and hence the company which is holding those lump sum amount of tokens will also accrue value as it has assets which are valuable, right? But yeah, that's kind of what has changed. The company can be incorporated on chain as well and have its own token
Mm-hmm.
system. But that is a ways off. The reason being, um, it, VCs generally raise from LPs in dollars,
Mm-hmm.
which is that money, right? And they want to distribute in dollars as well, and they want certain rights and powers over those companies in order to safeguard their investment, which would be
Mm-hmm.
very tough with an on-chain company, right? So currently, at least, I don't see companies being incorporated on-chain. That's
Mm-hmm.
still to happen off-chain for a while, but yes, projects will happen off-chain. So on-chain, sorry. So the way it works for VCs is they'll be investing in the company, yes, to kind of accrue the lump sum of all the um, projects that that company is building, but also will invest certain amounts in each individual token or each individual project that this company might create. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, over a 7-ish year period that VC might stay with a particular company, the company might create 2 or 3 projects maximum. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to go crazy and you have like 50 different projects to create. And ideally, that should not be the case. But yeah, that's kind of how the
Interesting.
system will work. Yeah, that's broadly
Acha.
my process.
So like let's say like as an investor, like how do you check a Web3 startup? Like how do you sort of validate their situation? Because multiple rug pulls happening here and there, and considering the space is not really trustworthy, like at least since the past few months, like what's your process to sort of see if this startup is like really worth it or not? Like
Yeah, for
generally
me,
in the Web3 space.
it's a I have a fairly strong thesis. I believe in investing in strongly on chain. I'm an on chain maximalist.
Mm-hmm.
Focus largely on Ethereum and Bitcoin, right? So the way I think of this is Bitcoin is largely going to be the store of value, the um, money of the internet, if you will, right, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's pure play, and that's what the developers are focusing on. The core maintainers are focusing on is making it the money of the internet, right? That is all single-minded focus. Ethereum, on the other hand, is basically a decentralized computer, right? The EVM is one of the most phenomenal um, executions or products I've seen in the last decade. The EVM specifically because it's a it's a decentralized virtual machine that is running across
Mm-hmm.
millions of computers, which and executing computations as transactions, right? Which is kind of mind blowing to me. But because the EVM is a kind of uh, if you think of it as a decentralized computer, the way I think is any and every deterministic computation can happen purely on chain, right?
Hmm.
And so I have a very strong bent towards that, right? Saying, hey, can we put all transactions, all computations on chain? So I focus on, I have kind of three theses or three themes where I try to invest. One is, um, creating a digital economy, right? Where the
Hmm.
focus is on, keeping whatever the token is, right? Ethereum or whatever, strongly on chain and creating a velocity of money for that particular token where people are using it not or investing in that token not in the expectation of fiat value accrual and fiat profits or fiat gains, right? But because they see real utility in
Hmm.
that token and keep spending it and earning it. And how do you create that digital economy for ETH, for example, right? Saying, hey, I
Sure.
can use it to consume certain content. I can earn ETH by contributing to certain projects, and hence that kind of virtual cycle becomes where we're creating a separate digital economy, which is kind of disconnected. Um, Second being infra and infra and dev tools around this. So anything which allows digital economy to scale. And
Mm-hmm.
third theme being unique on ramps, right? And notice I'm saying on ramps, not off ramps.
Mm-hmm.
I specifically believe, again, kind of as an industry, the communication should be on, yes, bringing more people on chain, but not necessarily with the expectation of fiat gains.
They
But
have, from what
because
I'm grasping is you're saying people should see actual utility and not like exchange in fiat and gain profit. That's what you're saying.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
But those are the broad three theses that I have,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what I look for in companies, right? Are they creating a digital economy? Are they keeping people on chain? Is
Hmm.
the product strongly on chain, right? If it's a product that is partially on chain, partially off chain, doesn't work for me, right? I would rather see all computation happen on chain, and that is enabled strongly with recent rise of roll-ups, zk roll-ups, optimistic roll-ups,
Mm-hmm.
with the rise of um, app chains, parachains, and that whole concept, right? So very interested in those segments, and that's broadly what I look for. From
Interesting.
a diligence perspective, would be looking at a solid team which has real knowledge and a specific ideology towards where they want to go. Again, if the team is in this because they want fiat gains, then I mean it's just misaligned incentives, not
Hmm.
going to work.
Hmm.
Right? They have to do it because they really truly believe in the ecosystem and want to accrue value in that manner, right, through the ecosystem. And I generally, my simplest kind of simplest sign is I just check the GitHub of the developers who are saying,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna be a Web3 founder, right? And then I see, okay, most of these guys have had like 4 commits in the last year,
Hmm.
um, and don't push anything, don't have a cadence. I mean, you see JD Kanani's GitHub
Yeah.
history, and deep into the project, he's still committing to the project, making pull requests,
Sure.
coding,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that guy's a legend. Like that guy's a legit developer
True.
who's like, and then Samni you'll see a lot of founders coming, okay, yeah, I'm the CTO of this,
Mm-hmm.
Web3 company, and then there's like 4 commits in the last year.
Sure.
Doesn't work, right? So that's like my easiest filter to put them out. But I mean, I can go on and on about how I invest, but I can take a pause here because I don't want to drone on.
Okay. Okay. So about Web3, right? Like there's a lot of like really smart guys saying ki they did not validate Web3. And one of their very common disagreement is due to the blockchain trilemma. What do you think of that? Like, do you think the blockchain dilemma actually exists, or it's just like a theory that people are sort of building to disagree with the Web3 folks?
What is the blockchain dilemma? Forgive me.
It's blockchain trilemma is it's a triangle, and one is security, decentralization, and then scale. So what they are trying to say is, if you increase decentralization, you can't have scale. If you increase security, you can't have, like, either of the two. Like, if you increase one of the parameters, the other one sort of this inversely proportional to that, something like that.
Got it. Okay, this is what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So I have a see. I'm generally very optimistic. As a VC, you have to be an irrational optimist. So I believe we as humanity will always find a way, right? Um,
Hmm.
and we have some of the smartest minds of the world and a lot of capital going towards it. So we'll definitely find a way. So, for example, right, and obviously certain things maybe just don't need one of the trilemma, right? It is in
Hmm.
fact better for Bitcoin to not be that scalable or not to have very high TPS, because that leads to higher scarcity and hence leads to better value accrual and better um, belief as a store of value, right? Better trust as a
Hmm.
store of value, right? Um, on the case of scalability, for example, in Ethereum, right? Um, it is actually very decentralized now.
Hmm.
It's been years since I think the keys that Vitalik and the other core devs and core founders had have been given away. So I don't believe anybody has single-handed access to the Ethereum ecosystem since the hard fork. Um, on
Hmm.
the security front, fairly secure. Proof of stake has done well, and I personally don't see any issues with proof of stake happening along over time. And on the
Hmm.
scalability fund, we're already building solutions. Again, like I said, roll-ups. We're creating models like app chains, parachains, ZK Sync, ZK Portal. Lots coming up which allow the chain to scale, right? And with zero knowledge proof, this is going to be a lot easier. What's basically happening is, and how I see this is, right, we're creating an execution layer, and Ethereum is the pure kind of settlement layer, right? It's where everything is logged in. It's where all the
Hmm.
transactions are settled, but the execution may happen at a roll up, on a parachain, on an app chain, whatever you call it, right? And all the transactions that are validated, verified, are transmitted to Ethereum and verified, validated on Ethereum again through a ZK manner, and then just written on chain. So, because execution is happening in these separate chains and separate hardware, right? It happens a lot faster. But B,
Hmm.
you can't fake transactions because you
Sure.
know the zero knowledge proofs
Hmm.
would not work otherwise. And C, you know. Uh, in the end all transactions are written on Ethereum, so nobody can, there's non repudiability, right? You can't repudiate that, okay, मैंने ये transaction किया ही नहीं था. Once it's on chain, it's on chain.
It's on trend.
So I mean, decentralization, security, scalability, all three covered, right? We find solutions as and when, right? Even in Bitcoin now, scalability is coming already through the Lightning Network, right? The payments.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if there's this guy called Run with Bitcoin, Paco de la India.
Okay.
He's going around the world making Lightning-based payments. There's a bunch of
Hmm.
Bitcoiners who are going around, to El Salvador, etc., using Bitcoin for payments and nothing else, and it's working phenomenally well for them, right? So it's a matter of time. We keep learning. There's always research happening. There's always better tech being built. It improves, and we will find a way. So not a big uh, fan of saying, okay, this trilemma is never going to be
True.
solved, or 2 out of 3.
Hmm.
I mean, there's always some way around, right? And we can always find a way to solve the problems we face. That's
Sure.
human ingenuity. Yeah.
Okay, but well, from what I've sort of grasped while talking to really, really, really smart guys, even in the tech space, the amount of hatred they have for Web3 is like sort of unmatched for any other technology, right? So let's sort of go back in the past. So let's, whenever like the gas cars were coming out, people were against it, saying multitude of reasons. And then later on, when it got adopted, things went fine. So you're saying कि after a point, once blockchain is mass adopted, ये सब trilemma वगैरह सब चला जाएगा. Like people sort of use it on a normal basis.
It's this is a long journey we are on. There's this saying that humans consistently overestimate what they can do in the short term and consistently underestimate what they can do in the long term, right? So we have to kind of imagine this in a 10-12 year journey. In if you think about in 2010-12, whenever deep learning started coming, Google used deep q learning to identify cats in videos, right? And they were like blown away, and we were like, oh, AI is going to take over, and then nothing happened. Right? For many years, the thesis that okay, AI startups will take up, we didn't see too much happening, and then suddenly in the last couple years with large language models with
Yeah.
OpenAI, etc., things have just blown apart, right? So again, right, in the short term we always overestimate what we do, in the long term we underestimate what we do. So it's this is a 10, 12, 15 year journey that we're on. I can understand why founders may not be aligned with this whole story and vision. But like I said, I have a very specific thesis on what will work and what won't work, right? And why things will happen. For example, the story of Bitcoin might be that of creating a global reserve, which is not a fiat or not a domestically consumed um, currency, right? Which is kind of not run by anybody, decentralized, all that story. But the story of Ethereum and Web3 might be about creating a decentralized computer, right? Which is like immutable, which is, unfuckwithable. I know, I don't know if I'm
Unfuck
allowed
with.
to swear on this
Yeah.
podcast, but,
Interesting.
so for example, imagine, and I'm seeing this already happening. So there's this ZK rollup being built on Ethereum. It's an L2 called Starknet, and there's a group of
Stocknet.
companies working on Starknet under the Matchbox DAO, where they're building a bunch of strongly on-chain games. Right? What does that mean? Basically, they're putting entire computations of state chains of physics, all that logic on chain. Right? So the chain itself is computing कि मैंने ऐसे मुक्का मारा, right? So how does the state of the game change? Who gets hurt? Who moves where does which object go? Right, kind of thing. Now, why is this important? Right? If uh, the competition is happening on chain, first thing is clearly nobody can mess around with that, right? Nobody
No
can
one can
hack around
cheat, maybe.
mistakes on it, right?
ठीक है.
But second thing being, all right, that is a physics layer, or it becomes an asset which is shared across games. For example, let's say on the same chain, with a shared physics layer, you have Cricket 07, FIFA, and Modern Warfare and Halo being built. Then what happens is you can take Virat Kohli for the Virat Kohli character for a or persona for a game in Cricket 07, a great day of Test match cricket. Then take
Yeah.
him to FIFA and play a game against England.
Okay.
Then take the same character over to Modern Warfare, shoot people, and take the same character with the same gun from Modern Warfare and use it in Halo. Why? Because they have a common logic layer, right? A
Common
common
logic layer.
physics game
Like a
engine.
hive mind for games, if you may
So
say
their
that.
so their assets are kind of interoperable because the behavior is defined across all these games, right?
True. So
So
how probable is that, right? Because the complexity of, let's say, of FIFA or like Modern Warfare, like it's way
yeah,
different.
we're years
Uh,
away, but that's kind of where अभी तो सिर्फ role based and turn based, I mean role based क्या turn based games, strategy games पे focus है, right? So Topology, GG, Dark Forest, ETH, if you Dope Wars, ETH, if you
dark,
check
yeah, yeah.
now, those are some examples of strongly on chain games that are being built. So very early days. But
Hmm.
it's bound to happen, right? And I'm very excited to see that happening, to see strongly on chain. For example, um, uh, can there be a strongly on-chain support DAO, right? Where
Hmm.
okay, again, this kind of stems from a thesis of okay, most companies, right? Whether you talk about Uniswap, whether you talk about Aave, etc.,
Hmm.
um, will want to move away from their projects, right? So the interface with those projects, which are the web apps, may not
Hmm.
necessarily be maintained by the company, or the company may not want to maintain that over time. Instead, what's going to happen is you're going to have multiple individuals creating interfaces around each and every Web3 project or DApp or whatever, right? And if that is happening, everybody's going to want some customer support, right? Now, how do you
Hmm.
provide that? So, can you create a strongly on chain DAO of people who can support customers where messages are exchanged through the chain, encrypted through public private key and encryption, and voice standard staking slashing models incentives when can be created. So what you're allowing people to do is you're allowing people to contribute to projects on chain, right? You're allowing them to earn
Sure.
through their contributions on chain, and then this they can use on many other projects. For example, a FIFA 07 on chain
Hmm.
game, they played there, they spend it there, and they have fun, right? So that's kind of how
Sure.
you create a decentralized economy, and how. So that's kind of what I'm excited for, right?
ठीक है dude. So speaking about this, right, इसको थोड़ा extend करते हुए, dude, I talked to Dinesh by probably a couple of months, maybe like 2-3 months ago on the podcast, and we were talking about DeFi. So Dinesh is like, he's the head at Train Matter, which is the investment wing of Zirada. So we were talking about DeFi, and he said something very interesting. So he said ki there is no like specific need of blockchain in most cases. So normal basic, let's say basic paperwork can sort of be in place of a blockchain. So what do you think about that? Do you think like the technology of blockchain or technology of Web3 is so good ki it's irreplaceable from the actual current normal paperwork and normal technology?
um yeah, I guess blockchain technology tends to be a lot better than most of these processes.
Mm-hmm.
um Again, kind of, you have to think about the EVM as a decentralized computer, right?
Hmm.
Now, when you attach money to the computer, you can basically write the entire banking system in code, all the rules
Sure.
and regulations and everything in code, and let the computer
Mm-hmm.
just figure it out and execute it as and when required, right? There's no trust needed, there's no human intervention needed, nothing. This is effectively a refactoring of the entire banking system, right?
Hmm.
um, so yeah, I mean, I find it extremely valuable. So much human
Mm-hmm.
resources to be freed up from menial jobs they have to do in the banking ecosystem and go towards kind of higher pursuit. It won't completely remove the need for humans, right? So you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that most of what can happen on chain has to be deterministic, right? So
Hmm.
DeFi may, for example, if I'm doing loans, right, it is highly collateralized loans that most will give and not under collateralized, because those are deterministic, right? It's easy to know when to buy, कब लोन देने का, कभी
Hmm.
liquidate कर देने का, you can know it immediately. But when you have to under collateralize, or you know uh, give loans basis credit history and all that, all kind of
Mm-hmm.
formulas, that is non-deterministic, right? So in
Okay.
those cases you will still need humans in the loop,
Hmm.
right? So largely, another part of my thesis is anything that is on chain and is deterministic will be coded in on chain, right? And will
Interesting.
be run on chain, right? So you have to, humans then come in only when things are non-deterministic, when it's stochastic, when they have to really take a decision by probabilities. Over time, even
Hmm.
that can be kind of moved to code. And I have a broader thesis on how deep learning can be moved on chain. But
Interesting.
I
Hmm.
kind of, but yeah, so it's still very early days. I won't say
Hmm.
it's useless, right? For example, let's say we create the e-rupee on the Ethereum blockchain, right?
Okay.
Uh, what's gonna happen is every single transaction is uh, on logged on chain. It's settled on
Hmm.
chain. So अपना infra cost कुछ नहीं है, right? No servers, nothing.
Fair.
But also B, um, immutable history of who sent
Sure.
how much money to whom, right? So वो sort हो गया, right? Second thing is now you can start creating the banking system on top of that, right? Why not just allow
Hmm.
people to take loans on the e-rupee
Sure.
automatically using collateral, ye, wo, whatever, right? The same story. And then the parts which are stochastic, right? Where, okay, I need a home loan, but I don't have enough collateral to put in. Then you need credit risk. So that story can still happen on off chain through
Mm-hmm.
centralized
Sure.
institutions. You can still have regulations, but a lot of the processes and things that need to be done right now, right, can be taken away, right? Aj, for example, if I have to um, deposit a check, I still have to go to the bank and drop it off,
Sure.
or
Hmm.
fill up that form and submit it at the counter. It's really a big hassle, right? If
It's a
I have to
hassle.
send
True.
NEFT and RTGS, whatever, right? Online hair channels now, we can, Naseeb say we can now do it online. Still a lot of processes and flows in that, which
Hmm.
are a lot of friction, right? And then you have to calculate kitna fees padega, kitna hops hoga. And many a times, for example, many of our companies which are raising money from international investors have a
Hmm.
lot of trouble because their local branches, they're not from Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore, right? So their local branches may not know how to handle foreign transactions, and they get stuck in that. So now, if it was all in code, it wouldn't matter whether you lived in
Sure.
Ghaziabad,
Hmm.
whether you lived in Bombay, whether you lived in Indore, right?
True.
Um, so yeah, I'm a
समझ
big
गया.
believer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. ठीक है. So let's move on to NFT projects, right, Abhi? So NFT projects were like the thing maybe a couple of months, they still are, but a couple of months ago they were like a thing, and a lot of people got rug pulled and whatnot, right? So let's say as like a Web3 investor, how do you read a white paper? Like, what are the things you should probably look for in a white paper?
So
Let's say
what does that
specific
have
things.
to do with NFTs?
Dude, like most of the NFT projects which I'm looking at, they have like vastly different white papers. So one of those are like on the docs type situation. One of those are on the PDF type situation, which sort of have weird formats and stuff. So let's say, how do you validate a white paper? Ki, haan, this project might make sense, this project might not make sense.
So kind of addressing NFT projects first.
Mm-hmm.
Largely not a big fan of NFT projects in their current form,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kind of thing. It's going to fizzle out. Already, NFT volumes have dipped to like 95% of the peak, right?
Sure.
By like 95% of the peak. So, um, non-fungible tokens as a technology are going to play a huge role when there is utility attached to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And largely, again, my thesis is strongly on chain. So in the next 10-12 years, we have to focus on projects where the utility is on chain, strongly on chain, and can be executed through code, right? Kind of
Mm.
thing. For example, one of our companies, Strive Network, their whole story is about how can we enable NFT projects, existing and new ones, to extend more and more utility to their users through fractionalization, right? Kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, so yeah, that's a space we're interested in. But broadly talking about white papers, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
you can generally, once you've read enough white papers, you can tell what's a
Okay.
properly
Hmm.
thought out white paper written and not plagiarized, and what's something that's just been hacked together.
Okay.
In the earliest days, um, you know, most founders won't even have white papers
Sure.
when we're
Mm-hmm.
speaking to them, right? Or if they have, it's like very raw. So it's just easier for me to have a direct one-on-one conversation and understand what their vision is, how they're trying to build it, uh, work out. architectural diagrams, how the flows work. Just do a lot of whiteboarding and figure it out. No,
Dude, I looked at this like a couple of probably days ago. Randomly, an ad popped up of their organization. I was like, let's see this, and I was quite confused as well when I looked at the white papers. I'm like, इसको wet कराना पड़ेगा किसी से.
no, no,
So
I
that's why I
like
showed
the
it to you.
space though. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
good space, and I think it's in the
Interesting.
right direction. Like I said, right, creating a decentralized economy, an on-chain economy. This is the kind of company you will need. Slightly more focused approach probably is what I would recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Better tokenomics. So I mean, for
Interesting.
example, there is a company called Synthetics, right? It's one of those few companies where
The
they're
video one, right?
no, no, no.
Okay,
That's
that's
not the
different.
one I'm talking about.
Okay, okay,
It's basically a derivatives
okay.
on chain, right? You can basically create a synthetic or synth token which tracks the price of any asset, real world or on chain.
Hmm.
Um, so it allows you to bet on price action without actually owning an asset, right? So यहाँ बैठ
Hmm.
के I can bet on Facebook's price action without actually owning equity in Facebook.
Interesting.
Um, the interesting thing about there is they have the same token for governance and the same token has utility within the actual protocol, right?
Hmm.
So you basically have to own synth tokens in order syn is the word syn token
SYN. Okay.
in
Hmm.
order to be able to mint synthetic tokens of a particular asset. So if I want to create SBTC, a
Mm-hmm.
synthetic which tracks the price of BTC, I have to put in SYN tokens in order to get that. Now, that gives me access to a certain percent of the total debt. Basically, what you're
Mm-hmm.
creating is anyway. The whole point is I'll
I'll just look
explain.
it up 1 second. I'll just look it for a while. It's
I'll,
SYN token, right?
what I'm saying is SYN
Mm-hmm.
token has utility within the project, like outside of just governance and
Okay.
raising funds
Interesting.
for the project, right? Kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
this one has signs of that where you need the async token in order to stake, in order to slash, in order to
Yeah.
provide services, right? So, I think that's kind of cool.
Interesting.
But probably can be elaborated on and built better. I'm sure the founders will figure it out over time.
Interesting. Interesting. Say scene. Dude, let's get to FTX. So you're not a league player, are you? Are you a league player?
No,
Interesting.
I know SBF was though.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't that good either. Any which ways, dude. What do you think went wrong with FTX? Like it
I
being
think enough and
such
more
a
has
massive
been
thing.
said
Yeah.
about FTX and what went wrong and what did not. So I don't really have anything to add. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's really unfortunate, but I think the lesson for all of us is, in the end, it's going to be, not your keys, not your money, not your keys,
Not a
not
case,
your
not your money.
tokens. Just
Mm-hmm.
own your keys, man. Go self-custodial. Lots of solutions coming along to make better self-custody possible. Account abstraction is coming along. Smart contract wallets. Argent is doing some phenomenal work in the space. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, uh, not your keys, not your tokens, man. Just learn how to maintain your tokens, to save your tokens better, and own your key. That's all I'll say. That's the learning for me. That's the only lesson learning for me.
Interesting, dude. Why did investors invest in FTX and huge lump sum amounts with this happening in the background using like FTT token as collateral? How does that work? Like from what I figured, like do investors look at just the founder? Like after a certain point, ki, this founder has this company, so I have
There's a
good enough
great
trust.
thread on this. I'm not sure who wrote it. It's about maximizing expected value.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
let's say, so expected value is probability into the outcome, right?
Sure.
So
Huh.
let's say the possible outcome is $100 billion outcome, and there's only a 1% probability, right?
Hmm.
Then the expected value is how much? $1 billion.
$1 billion. Yeah. $1 million.
Let's say it's $100 million outcome, but there's a 50% probability.
50 million.
What's
Hmm.
the expected value? It's
50
$50
million.
million.
Yeah.
I am always going to go for the $1 billion possibility.
Hmm.
The venture fund
Interesting.
economics work this way. Um, right, let's say I have 100 crore fund. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making this very simple. It's a very simplified example that I'm taking. There's a lot more to this, but let's say I'm investing in 20 companies, 5 crore each, right? It's a 100 crore
Sure.
fund. A good investment or good return for me might be at least 300 crore, which might put me in the top quartile in US funds,
Hmm.
and 500, 600 crores to be in the top performing funds in India, right? Kind of thing. So let's say I have to make it 300 crore, right? What's going to happen is first 10 companies, zero. I don't get anything out of it.
Sure.
Next 5 companies, I'll get 1x out of it, maybe, right? So
Mm-hmm.
5 to 5, 25 crores I got back. Another 3 companies might give 5x of the initial investment. So that's um, 5 to 5, 25 into 3, 75 crores. So 75 plus 25, 100 crores I've gotten from 10 plus 5 plus 3, 18 companies, right? 18 कंपनीज में 100 करोड़ मिला है, 2 कंपनी बाकी है जिसमें मैंने 10 करोड़ इन्वेस्ट किया है. आई नीड
Hmm.
एटलीस्ट 300 minus 100, 200 crores from those 2 companies. So
Sure.
10 crores has to become 200 crores, right? Um, which means each company has to be a 20x, or at least one company has to be a 40x, 50x.
40x.
So
Sure.
any investor will invest only if there is a possibility that every single company has that multi-bagger opportunity, right? It's simple power law. हमारे में one deal is going to make or break our whole fund,
Mm-hmm.
right? That one
Sure.
deal. So we're always optimizing every single deal. Can this be the one deal? So if the VC saw that this was the one deal that had the possibility of being a 50x, 100x,
Sure.
200x bagger, they're willing to take it despite the risks, right?
Interesting. Understood. So it's mainly to sort of hedge bet so that at least one of those wins, so that you hit sort of the target. That's what you're saying.
That's basically a
Interesting.
job, right? Now, let's say you have a $500 million fund, right? You're gonna need at least
Mm-hmm.
6, 7 unicorns in order to be able to
Sure.
return the fund, right? Well,
True. Hmm.
6, 7 unicorns is so tough to find. It's really, really tough to, like, 500 million ka 1.5 billion karna is not an easy job, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so you want to make sure you find at least one company which can, create that $1 billion outcome for you, so that you have to think about the remaining 500 million after that, right?
Interesting.
Like,
Take it.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead.
Yeah. You can continue. You can continue.
No, I was just saying, Flipkart created that outcome, that singular outcome for like
Mm-hmm.
all the funds that like Axel, I think, had invested in Tiger and who else,
Tiger. Yeah.
whoever else. That one company created the whole outcome for all their funds, right? That had investing. So
Sure.
that's how it works.
Interesting. Okay, so how does like a normal user trust this space now, considering what has gone down since the past few months? Celsius going down, so many other like crazy Web3 startups going down. How does a normal user trust the Web3 space anymore?
Not your keys, not your tokens.
Not your case, not your tokens.
Self
Okay.
custody karo. Engage
Mm-hmm.
largely with decentralized protocols where you can read the code, understand the code. If you're not understanding the code, engage with the community. Do you believe the community is smart? Do you believe the community understands their shit? See, if everybody in the room is like you, then it's not a very strong community. If there are people in the community who are smarter than you, who know better,
Mm.
and they're putting that, then it's a better vote of confidence, right? Obviously, not that means that it won't fail. A lot of smart people were betting on Luna and UST
Yeah.
ecosystem,
Mm.
Banana, and things have not turned out well. So yeah, but always do your own research. I think it's too early. It's like 60s 70s for equity markets, right? We today
Mm.
all of us have exposure to equity markets through mutual funds or through direct investments, but
Sure.
in 50s 60s 70s there was real alpha because very few people actually used to invest in equities, right?
Interesting.
Very
Yeah.
few can actually capture that alpha, right? Kind
Very
of thing.
exclusive back then.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So it takes a lot of time to educate people, right? Even today, after all this, we have about what 10 crore, 100 million people investing in equity markets, right?
Equity
About
markets. Hmm.
1.5 billion dollars. After this much financial education is always a process, right? It's taken 20, 30, 40 years for us to go from land, gold, or government PF से बाहर भी कर सकते हैं कुछ, right? So
Mm-hmm.
to educate people on how to invest in crypto, where to put, what to not put, blue stock क्या है, blue chip क्या है, क्या नहीं. It'll take a lot of time. This is a
Interesting.
this is not something that can be done at rapid scale. You can't educate
Hmm.
hundreds of millions of users all at once. It's something that has to be done step by step. Let it compound over 5, 7, 10, 15, 20 years. That's where you start
Interesting.
seeing the effects, right?
Sure. Okay. So one of the couple last questions I have. Second last one being, is it right to look at cryptocurrencies as an investment, like in 2022, after all that's happened?
I Okay, this is
Is it a
not
money making
financial
machine or
advice.
no?
I can't give financial
Chalega,
advice.
bolo, bolo. It's fine.
Uh, this is not financial advice. I
Mhm.
personally I have a cadence. Every year I invest money in crypto, and I keep
Mhm.
investing kind of like an SIP in Bitcoin and Ethereum specifically. So for me this is a 4 generation long wealth creation story, right?
Hmm.
मेरे पर पोते के पोते will be very grateful
Mhm.
I bought Bitcoin and held on to it over time for them. So big believer, but again, the thought process should not be कि मेरे को fiat gains मिलेगा, मैं रुपया
Hmm.
कमाऊंगा इससे. If that's the mindset with which you're going in, it's going to be super tough.
Interesting.
Uh, this is for me a long-term game, and B for me fiat returns matters little and less. It's more
Hmm.
about making sure I own as much Bitcoin or as much Ethereum as I can. So yeah.
Interesting. Awesome. Okay. So last question, simple. Let's say a startup founder is going to pitch. So what are the couple of things that he should keep in mind before going in a pitch room or pitch meeting?
Um, it's
I saw one of your videos you made on like art of pitching. Like I think it
yeah, I
was
made
one
a
of the
bunch.
100x events. Yeah,
So
बहुत सारे देखे मैंने. Mhm.
there's a lot of nuance to how to pitch, but basically just get your story right. Don't set up too much context. I hate it when founders, and most VCs hate it when founders spend 15 minutes talking about the problem, the market, the opportunity, without ever talking about what you're doing at
Hmm.
all. So context setting at a minimal, and yeah, have a clear, focused hypothesis. Do
Mhm.
only one thing at a time. If you're doing too many things, the investor doesn't know where the money is going to go, and you're not going to get funded because we feel
Hmm.
okay, you don't have clarity of thought. So yeah, that's what I'll say. I think those are a few um,
Awesome.
tips.
Awesome. It's been a great time talking to you, Vatsal. I hope it's likewise.
You do as well.
Say
Thanks.
एक
Thanks for
second.
having me, Yash.
Yeah, yeah. I'll stop the recording. Don't leave just at 1 second.